education in Kentucky be like? What would be different? Imagine that you're a student. And education here is the way that we ideally want it to be. What is your experience as a student now? Where is your education happening? Is it inside a room? Is it inside a business? Or maybe is it even outside? Where is it? What sounds do you hear when education in Kentucky has been reimagined? What are the sounds the students are making? And what is it like for their families now, once we've completed this work? Looking back, what what is the goal? What is the goal of being educated? What does that really mean? And how about educators? What are they feeling now in a transformed system? What is it like to be a teacher? So take another breath or two and give yourself permission to just breathe deeply and relax a bit at the end of a long day. If you had to pick a color for what education in Kentucky will feel like when we have in place this new vision, what color is it? What color was it before this? Just take another moment or two, and then slowly, as you're ready, please come back. You can turn your camera back on when you're ready.
All right. I needed that.
So, well, experiment in virtual, I guess, virtual group, group breathing. I have my Fitbit and I'm working on using it as my reminder to take those in breaths in the franticness of life. So, if you're willing to share a little bit about that experience, we would appreciate it. It could be what came up for you, If nothing happened, that's fine too. I'd really enjoy if anyone got to this place of clearly seeing some color for education. If we had more time, we were going to do some other activities, maybe another time, but I have found sometimes that getting rid of the kind of analytical, and people usually think of me as being that person, but I also have this other side, and I think that's true for all of us. What color was education in the future? Could you ascribe a color to it? And just feel free to jump in. You can either do it in the chat or share orally if you'd like. Donnie, it sounds like you had a big sigh at the end. What color came to you, if any?
Hmm.
Oh, Abby's saying a rainbow. Thank you.
I'm with Abby.
So a rainbow, and Sarah also. Um, for those of you who, like my son, are colorblind, did you hear any sounds associated with this imagined new state? It was calming, thank you. And I'm just trying to see what a few of you are saying. I don't know, for some reason I'm having trouble. Well, the whole point is really to connect with the opportunity that we have here to envision and imagine and co-create this future. So thank you for indulging me in a little few minutes. Green, laughter, vibrant. Um, so a lot of colors, rainbow and black and white. Yep. Um, you can continue the discussion. I know that Donnie has a full plate of activities for us to address more directly these questions, but I would urge you to kind of keep this in mind as we go throughout the rest of the 2 hours here. Keep in mind the value and opportunity to come from that place of the future rather than the past. It's not that we want to get rid of the past. There's a lot in the past to inform the work. But sometimes I think we forget that we're actually really pretty good architects of, of systems and results. So keep that in mind as we go. And again, Donnie, thank you for the opportunity to lead this activity. And thank you so much to Dr. Glass and Dr. Young for inviting me to participate. I'm enjoying it, and I appreciate so much each of you. So thanks.
Well, thank you, Judith, and thank you to this whole community for really building this space together. So we do have a lot to do, which is always the case, but it's always really important to spend time doing this, connecting, breathing, imagining, envisioning the future. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gretchen to talk through our where we landed with all of the user profiles, which is in a good spot.
Thanks, Judith, and thanks, Donnie. And hi, everybody. So I'm going to share this with you quickly, just so you can get a picture. These first two questions, remember, were about which final product you're interested in working on. And we're going to send you your group assignments after our call today. But the good news is, if you take a look here, this is people's first choices and second choices. And among those, we have good distribution. And we did get a good group of respondents back to the survey. So thank you for that. And then in terms of the voting, we didn't have any profiles that didn't have support to go through, either from the full group or from the user group associated with the profile, which means you all did some amazing work. We have a really strong set of profiles. There are some notes, and these were in the survey itself, that I'll just remind you of, which is that we have some users where we know we probably need to go out and hear a little bit more. So folks who are here as community members, we talked last time in our breakout group about some plans for reaching out and doing some more in that area. There were folks in the school leader group who had a similar kind of theme, district leader group, and teacher group who sort of had like some different niches that they wanted to reach out to. And so we have some plans about how to address that. in particular with the L3 districts, the local laboratory of learning districts who are in this coalition and also going to be going forward with a lot of local work about some ideas about some empathy interviews maybe happening between teams there to hear a little bit more of some of those school system voices. So we have plans to address that. And then I just wanted to show you here an example of, on this profile right here, there was some feedback to improve it. There were not many profiles that received feedback, but where they did in the working deck, which you all have access to and we'll be hopping right back into and working in shortly, you can see down here in the notes below the slide if there was feedback in the final survey. And so there was just some like really fine editing feedback here. This was somebody who voted as a fifth just to give feedback that they were like, I'm actually a 5, but I would love to see this a little bit differently. So, so this is just an example, but you can look through and see all of this in here. But the good news is we have a full set of profiles. We have a full set of profiles this coalition feels very good about in terms of collecting a good portion, at least, of the story of the Commonwealth. And for those places where we have a limited number of profiles, we have plans about how to go forward with those. So that's the update on profiles, Donnie.
Okay, and if you want to throw the slides back up, starting on slides, slide 6 would be good. So profiles is great. Profiles does not a final report about the current state make. And so we have a couple chunks of work to do. First, we are going to start constructing storylines. And we're going to capture the big ideas from each stakeholder group, acknowledging that different users have different experiences. However, if we can tell some clear stories about how different user stories are similar and how they're different, what's working and what's not, that will help us construct a narrative based on those user profiles. So that's the goal of this next time. We're going to send you back into your role-alike groups to do so. But let me give you just a quick recap. We talked about this last time a little bit, and you've done a little bit of thinking about it, I'm sure. But on the next slide, I can share with you one template, one process by which you can do this. So you can use the problem statement frame. It's a way of naming the user, naming their need, and then connecting that need to an insight that you have about them. So, for example, based on looking at all of the different user profiles for the students, one big storyline that's likely to come up, or that we're saying maybe as an example, is that students, the user, need more focus on their unique needs and interests. That's their big need that's common across many of the users. Because they, and this is an insight that we gathered by looking across all of the user profiles, they feel like the system is trying to get performance from them rather than develop them as people. So that's a thing that we're drawing out by looking across all of the students, and similarly, a similar need in red, okay? So next slide, please. If that frame, you can utilize that frame, user, need, insight. You might also consider some starter questions. What are some themes you heard? What do these users want from the school system? Are there needs that are in common? Are there insights that are in common or that connect them? And is there an important difference in the experience of a set of users that we want to call out? Maybe there's a few that share a certain problem, and you can name that. And then what do the users hope for in the future of education? And what are the insights that they might have about assessment and accountability? So these are some starter questions that you can use to begin the conversations in your small groups. Okay. So we are going to send you out into your role-alike groups now. And we're going to start with about 15 minutes. There's an orange slide in the working deck, which we're going to put into the chat. And this is an opportunity to begin to look across your approved and confirmed user profiles and start to think about what are the storylines that connect them. So students will be looking at student profiles, families will be looking at family profiles, and teachers will be looking at teachers and so on. Okay, so we're going to be staying in our role-alike groups for this segment. All right, any questions before we send you off?
Donnie, I might just grab the questions. Oh, actually, they're in the deck, aren't they? If they go to the, do you want to tell them where to find the questions that you just shared in the deck?
Yes. So the on the yellow slides that are in the working deck, you'll see some of the themes that you could potentially pull out and the example problem statement frame. But we can copy that slide over with those questions in case that's helpful.
I can just show it, I think, real quick. Like students, your yellow slide is on slide 18. Everybody else scroll down from there to find your yellow slides for your group. I think we're good.
Okay. All right. So we are going to come back at 4:38. We're going to see if 15 minutes gets us there. We can always extend to 4:40 if we need. How generous it is. Okay. All right. Lauren, are you ready to go? Zoom. Hi, everybody. Great. So just scanning over the various storylines, I can see that groups made a ton of progress, which is awesome. So thank you for engaging in that. This is just the start, and storyline formation is going to take a bit, but we're going to use this raw starting place, and the group that takes the task of the current state of Kentucky report is going to continue to work on streamlining these, but we needed the people in those roles, the people who live that experience, to start naming their story. So now we have family storylines, and we are going to now switch gears a little bit. So we're going to do some work all together, because now we can actually see across the many storylines. So we have family storylines, teacher storylines, district leader storylines, and some of those things are unique to that particular user, but some of them are actually in common, and the ways in which they are in common can tell us something about the whole system. And by the whole system, we mean education in the Commonwealth and the education system in this country as a whole. So we are going to take a step back now, and we're going to be looking at all of the different storylines and seeing what do we now know about the system, or what can we infer about the system as a whole. So Gretchen, can you put up slide 11? Okay. All right, so here's an example of the thought process. Gretchen, you're sharing your presenter view right now. You're showing people behind the curtain. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is an example of the kind of thought process that we're hoping that you'll engage in now. So, for example, you're going to read through the slides with all of the different the storylines, and you might notice that every user has issues being understood as whole people with many facets and many needs. Right? That's I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads right now. People are like, "Yep, that's true." So that means if everybody's experiencing that, if teachers are experiencing that, if school leaders are experiencing that, families are experiencing that, students are experiencing that, that means one thing that you could infer is that the system has too few mechanisms for understanding the complexity of individual students, schools, and communities. That's an example of a system-wide story that we can draw from looking across all of the user stories, the user storylines. So this is what we're going to ask folks to do now is we're going to share a Padlet with you where we've taken all of the different storylines from across the different users, and they're all in one place. And we're going to open that up, And we're going to spend some time just reading and doing some individual brainstorming. I don't know about you, but if you're like me, you're also kind of a verbal processor. So you need some place to go and maybe make sense of it. So we want to offer you that opportunity also. So if you're interested in doing that, Lauren can give you some instructions about where to go. And there will be somebody there who can help, sort of be a discussant or be like a thought partner. And anybody who's there can start to think about this together. But let's get the Padlet in there so that people who are comfortable just doing some individual thinking and work can start. Oh, thanks.
So I'm sorry. So if we want to just bounce ideas off of somebody,
Yes.
and I think a lot. I think I already done a lot of thinking about myself. I could use somebody to bounce some ideas off of.
Yeah.
Without them having me committed.
Oh yeah, that's you're just like me, Susan. I like to.
I may look like I'm not doing anything, but my brain's going.
I bet. I know. I've been in small groups with you this whole time. All right, so open up Padlet, and then Sarah, did you want to throw something in? I saw that you came off mute. Sarah Lynch.
Oh, I was just going to tell Susan to come hang out with me in the breakout room and we can talk it through. Because I like to externally process too.
Okay, so how do I get to you?
We'll explain.
Okay.
How do I get to you?
Lauren's going to help you do that. Does everybody else understand their marching orders, and does anybody else want to go into a small group to just have some discussion time?
Can I go into a small group?
You bet. Yeah. You
Yeah,
could.
so,
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Lauren.
We will have a few breakout rooms to choose from, and there'll be either someone from the CIE team or another person that you can bounce ideas off of. If you want to do that, you can click on breakout rooms at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And you should be able to select something that says choose breakout room, and then you can choose from there. If you don't see where it says breakout rooms at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you might have to click the 3 dots that says more, and it might be there if your window is a little small. I'll also put these instructions in the chat.
I don't see any dots or breakout, but then I'm partially blind.
It's all right. I think we can help you.
I can place you in a room if you'd like as well.
Yeah, just place me there. I'm lazy.
No worries. That's what we're
I
here
mean,
for.
walk there, you think over there. All right. Wish life was like that.
Can you place me as well? I'm working on an iPhone.
Whose voice was that? I can't see your video.
Kimber.
Kimber.
Kimber, got it. Thank you. I will do that right now.
I see you in breakout room. So that I click on that.
Yep.
Yes, that's right.
All right, and then I'm gonna go in with Sarah. All right, I'll join. All right.
All right, Kimber, I'm going to assign you right now.
You got a couple more in the chat box too that want to go.
Thank you. I will.
How are people doing? Are we feeling? If you give me a thumbs up if you feel like you're good, give me other hand signal if you feel like a couple more minutes, 3 minutes. Nora, I saw you laugh at that. I caught myself. Yeah.
An acceptable hand.
Sorry, I am that teacher.
Just a few more minutes.
Whatever. You can make a t-shirt for me.
I'm a New York native. That other hand signal would not be one that you'd want to see. So
I was a middle school science teacher. I know this. I knew it as soon as it came out of my mouth. I knew. I was like, all right, I'm gonna reel that one back in. Just reel it back. Okay. All right. I'm seeing mostly thumbs up, like people are good. So if that's the case, then we'll we'll move forward because it's actually the KDE team that's going to take responsibility for looking across the system-wide storylines. So that's the that's the next task. All right. Why don't we maybe Lauren just give them like a 1 minute heads up to close, or just say like closing in 30 seconds or something. Okay.
Thank you. I got my tweet. I think I'm good with it. Thank you.
Oh, nice. Very good. These are really great. Take a look while we're waiting for everybody to come back. Just take a second and scan over some of these.
Yeah, these are strong insights.
Okay, we're back. Beautiful. Okay. All right. As we were, those of us who were here in the main room were just noting to ourselves how incredibly insightful these storylines are. And in this moment when we all seem to be seeking empathy, it's actually incredible, I think, just to note how similar our experiences are from user group to user group. Everybody is feeling certain things. And the system, I think, has now clearer sense of what is that common uniting thread that connects all of these different stakeholders. And that's a really powerful thing to have come out of this process. Many of these things you're reading and probably were like, yes, I could have told you that a year ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. But to be able to name that it's a common experience across everyone is a result of just being able to be in this community and this coalition. So I just want to acknowledge that and say thank you to everyone for engaging in that. So with this next piece, we're going to we essentially just created, if you want to think about it this way, we just created the outline of the current state report. So we have a series of storylines by each user, and we have some common storylines, at least the beginnings of them, across the entire system. That is the description of what it is now, the system now. But we need to define the system we need, and we need to describe what we want to learn or what we have to learn in order to attain that system. Every single problem statement can be flipped into an opportunity. And every single opportunity that we want to try to realize requires learning how to do things we don't know how to do yet. And so we need to name those two things, mostly because we said we were gonna, when we said what reports we were gonna write, but because we think they will have incredible value, naming the current system, naming the future state, and then also naming the thorny questions that we're gonna have to answer in order to actually do that. So here's an example from the family storylines. The storyline that came out was that families need to be known, understood, valued in ways that value their full identities and experiences, not just so that they can be enlisted to improve their children's performance. So this is something that came out of our conversation, and I'd seeded it with the group. If you flip that into the future state, you name what it would look like if the issues within it were fixed. Families will experience a system that seeks to know, understand, and value them in ways that honor their full identities and experiences. So we've now taken the problem statement and the story, and we've flipped it into a future state that we want to attain. This is what we want. This is the system we need. And if that's the future state, then the thorny questions we're going to have to answer two examples of this might be, how do we build the mindsets and skills among educators to know and understand families in this way? And how might we give families and educators enough time together to build these kinds of relationships? These are non-trivial questions, right? Like everybody, it's not just on the educators, it's actually about time and opportunity and structures and systems. And so these are two big questions about how do we attain the future state? So we want to engage you in the opportunity to start thinking and imagining and building off of the exercise that Judith led at the very beginning, and like how do we imagine into the future once we are done doing this work? And then what does that future state look like? And then what are the questions we have to answer to get there? Judith, I see your hand raised. Do you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm turning my screen on. So the one thing that it gives me a little pause here is it just seems to me that in going from families will experience, just to use this example, that when we jump to the thorny question, it feels to me like what we're doing is now embracing an underlying assumption that in fact, the reason families are experiencing X in the future state is because educators need to know X, Y, and Z. And although that may be true, I think also we need to investigate the possibility that there are additional and maybe even more pervasive underlying reasons. I don't want to take up tons of time here, but I think it's really important when we're engaging in this question about the future state to not get stuck in a way in an answer that is going to reiterate it. And I'm a little worried that this framework might do that. So, like in this case, I suspect strongly that some of the systems that the families need to be changed, also educators need to be changed in order to allow them to do exactly what families want. And I'll just be quiet on that, but that's kind of my urging here.
Yeah.
To really not get stuck in using these questions to imply that that's the only possibility, because they may or may not be.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things on that, Judah. Thank you so much for raising that. We need to think expansively about the root causes and acknowledge that it doesn't always sit in just one place, and that the questions that we start with may not be the questions that we end with, and this list is not definitive. So I just want, yes, I agree with everything you're saying. We don't want to utilize question frames that put the problem in a specific place necessarily. And so let's take that as a principle as we move forward. But also allow folks to just begin with some questions, and then we can, over time, both within the process of writing these reports and in the process of doing the inquiry and answering some of these questions, we're going to get to new questions and start to ask ourselves some important ones. I do think that your point of there's a way to construct these questions that inherently puts blame on somebody or something or some part of the system. And that's in many cases neither productive nor fair. So let's try to push each other.
But when we talk, okay, it's not about blame. See, we're going to use that word accountability, right, and responsibility. If we were to just specifically talk about family engagement and we go to Karen Mapp's dual capacity framework and we go all the way back to her and Ann Henderson and Beyond the Bake Sale, the onus is on the schools to make things right. So I think blame is too harsh a word. And sometimes we get caught up in trying to be careful that we don't hurt somebody's feelings. But hard truths, one of our charges, right, is to ask hard questions. So we can't lose what the essence of this is when we're concerned about that. That's a concern that I have.
Yep. So I think that's why doing this, doing this within user groups where we can begin that process, Penny, and then keep drilling in. I think that's got to be it. Sorry, Gretchen, you were going to say something.
That's okay. I just want to offer something. First of all, this I'm appreciating this conversation. Thank you. And I was thinking about, like there's been a quote from a parent that has kind of like been in my side through this whole process, which is a story of a parent who experienced some very direct, very damaging discrimination themselves when they were a child in public education. And knowing that we have that story, a question I might ask about this is, how would we learn about families' experiences with school and the ways in which those matter to relationships? I might also ask a question that's like, how do we find out what is making this difficult for educators? And I might still ask the question of, how do we build some skills and mindsets with educators who are not comfortable or prepared for these kinds of relationship building? And so I think if I were in a group doing this, I might try to think of a longer list right now rather than a shorter one to try and cover the territory that you all are pointing out. I don't know if that's helpful, but
so would it make sense then to encourage the groups to engage in first at maybe what questions are missing or what other questions might we be asking?
Yeah, you're going to be generating these. So yeah.
Just an example.
Yeah.
This is just a model.
Yeah. You're starting with a blank slide when you get into your group, Judith.
I think we talk about inclusion, but we're not really doing it. And the way you really get inclusion is to put yourself in other people's shoes. And that means by having groups, you know, where they're all people from all different walks of life, and even do some role playing. I mean, I think having debate teams. I mean, there's some people who just instinctively have those skills. I mean, I think I'm a pretty easygoing person, and I feel how other people are feeling quite a bit. But then when I get some people in my mindset, instead of I can think of what I'm going to say, and to where it sounds great in my mind, but then what comes out of my mouth is like, you're an idiot, and that's, and then that builds, I'm a bit extreme there, but we really need to be able to talk to each other, because I think we're afraid of hurting somebody's feelings, but we're afraid of saying the wrong thing, and then people want to build resentment over that. And it's like all educators are like this, all parents are like this. Well, there's no everybody's like anything. And I think it needs to start with the kids too, and encourage things where it's like role playing, and the only thing I know for sure is I know debate is good for that, because I have you take it the other side, and I think things like that. But there's the guy who's a black guy who goes to that skill, so you get somebody to listen to you when they're starting off hating you. I mean, I just need to get more. But I mean, those people need to help teach all of us.
This is a perfect example, Susan, I think, of the conversation that let's have in our group, generate some of these pieces. So your job is to go back into your role light groups, experience the discomfort of trying to empathize across all of the user types, and start to define, like, what do you
I love the person on her face.
What do we need to learn, and what questions do we need to start asking and answering in order to get to our future state? But the goal is to go from your storylines within your role, and then get into the questions that need to be answered. So just take a second now. I've tried to go through and make copies of all the slides. So just open up the working deck again, and just start perusing your storylines, and then just start thinking, not typing yet, but just thinking to yourself, like, what is the future state? And then what are some questions that I would ask? This will give Lauren a second to just make sure that our groups are ready to roll. So we're just in our working deck.
And I've just put up so you can see one example of what's waiting for you in there. But yeah, it'd be good for your group to just scroll down. So if you're a family member, take a look at these slides and just do your own kind of pre-thinking about future state and questions that you think we ought to be asking to help us get to that future state.
I think with Zoom calls and things like that, it's even easier to get people together for talking. And they don't have to travel, get mad at each other.
Yeah, there's definitely resources and new learnings that we've had over the past year that can help us address some of these questions. There's probably some new questions that have come up as well. And so in a moment, the goal here is progress, not perfection, as it always is. So when you're in your groups, you can just start thinking about, maybe I would suggest, given the time, pair up around different storylines and just start typing and thinking about what that future state might be. And then what are some big questions that are coming up for you?
I'm sorry, where are we supposed to be typing at?
In the working deck, we're just looking through, and if you're probably thinking about some questions that might be coming up already, and you can start typing those in as you're looking at the storylines.
Lauren, you might be able to just open the rooms and then keep grouping if you want to send some off.
Sure. How long would you like them open for?
Let's do 15 minutes. Welcome back. Take a scan, since everybody's got it open. Just take a look through some of the kind of peachy orange slides and just start noticing myself, but wanted to just help close out this discussion, recognizing that it's just the beginning of this particular body of work, like defining these big questions that need to get answered, and what does the future state look like is a big task. But starting with the storylines, I think we have a really good start. So I'm looking through just the different things that have been written by different stakeholder groups, and the district leaders have thought a lot. Congratulations, good job, district leaders. And the students have, as always, put together some amazing insights into what the future needs to look like. And so this is a powerful beginning to the products that we are putting together. And July will involve building these out more and communicating across the coalition in an ongoing way. As we think about sending everybody into July and continuing this work, we wanted to circle back to the last dimension of assessment and accountability that has been a recurring, that is this theme of assessment and accountability has sort of been recurring through this coalition. And the last one is consequences and stakes, which I'll hand it over to Paul to introduce our guest to talk about that.
Thank you, Donnie. So we're very fortunate to have a longtime friend and partner of Kentucky and the Kentucky Department of Education Brian Gong here today to give us a few words on this subject of consequences and stakes. Brian's attended every one of the coalition meetings so far and has a wide-ranging knowledge and perspective on this topic. So Brian, why don't you give us a few minutes on your perspective here?
Thanks, Paul and Donnie. Just really grateful to be part of the process, and so excited for the potential that it brings. I've been working for over 25 years in what people are calling large scale assessment and accountability. And I think that the work of the coalition and the underlying values for the department and others is to fundamentally rethink how education can serve the purposes that I think we all want it to have. What I wanted to do was to just say something about assessment, accountability, and consequences and stakes at this point in time from my perspective. And I chose three little pairs. The first one is vision, and the phrase that goes with that is be bold. The second is constraints, deeply understand them. The third is system, be inclusive. We are reimagining what diverse stakeholders and community members want. And it's really important that we don't close down too quickly what that imagining and work is. So if someone says, but it won't meet federal requirements, I would say too early. That's our envisioning is not to meet federal requirements. Our envisioning is to say what's the best thing possible. And I'll give you two things on that. One is federal requirements have changed, so don't peg your hat on that. The other is we all know that the federal things are imperfect. I would argue that they're well-intentioned, but I think we might all agree that they're imperfect. The second is to start from values. So really envision what it is that we want to do. And then this idea about consequences and stakes. Someone says, what's the difference between assessment and accountability? The current model of accountability that we're all using from the federal perspective is accountability adds consequences to assessment. Assessment, we have a criterion for what is good enough, and then there's a judgment or an evaluation, and then consequences are there and stakes. I think there's largely been a negative connotation to that because for so many people it's been negative. But in an ideal world, there will be consequences and they will be good. We want things to make a difference. We want things to be consequential, and we want things to matter to people. So whether you call that stakes or not, we say we want people to feel like I have a part in this. If people don't feel like they have some stake in it, it's a way of saying I'm not invested in it. So we need to be inclusive so that the stakes and the consequences are positive and they are pervasive. They need to fit the whole community. And if I had longer, I would give a little argument about what's happened with federal accountability. Federal accountability, when I said it was well-intentioned, it started off with a theory of action saying we're giving money in Title I to offset, to compensate for economically disadvantaged situations in homes and communities. And then one of the questions was, if that's going on, how do we know that that's happening effectively? So this program evaluation got put in. And then those of you who remember CARA, when there was this very large tax increase, they said, how do we know that it's actually making a difference and closing achievement gaps? And so the state came up with an accountability system. The problem is, I think, that those systems got more and more technically involved so that they are technically refined, but they are external to the community largely. They are highly standardized. They are somewhat narrow. And when people say we want it to be able to be legally defensible, then it makes it so that what's admitted is very small. I think that the invitation to us in the coalition now is to say, let's not worry about technical things first. We'll work on that. Let's get the vision right. Let's get the community right. Let's get the inclusiveness right. And then we can work on that as we go. I'm really excited for this possibility. I think it has an opportunity to inspire and benefit and bless many people. I'm grateful to be part of it. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Brian. So Brian has really talked about the current theory of actions behind the use of consequences and stakes in accountability systems in terms of how students and educators and schools improve their performance over time. As we consider all of the data that we've been looking at, and we consider new theories of improvement, what might we change our theories going forward? And how might we use consequences of stakes in wholly different ways as we create a new system in the future? That's really the question as we begin this work and of writing these reports, creating a vision for the future, and creating a path going forward for the L3 communities and districts, the local learning, local laboratories of learning. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Donnie.
Great. Awesome. So we're going to invite folks to give feedback on the coalition process. We're going to ask folks to do this via a survey, and the survey actually has many parts, and so we're actually going to give you time right now to fill it out, and that'll be sort of our big summary close. But we wanted to acknowledge one big thing, like one big idea. So on slide 19, or the next one, yes. The Kentucky Coalition for Advancing Education, where we are right now, is the template for the process that will be replicated and sort of iterated upon by the local laboratories of learning. So if you look around at this coalition, it's incredibly diverse along a number of dimensions, and it's inclusive of many voices, and we're creating and building and learning together. We want the local laboratories of learning to take on a similar process. And so we just wanted to give you that charge and give you that context, because it makes your feedback that much more important. And so when we ask you to do the closing survey that kind of captures everything that we learned from this experience, we want you to be completely honest and share all of your sort of big learnings from this whole experience, good, bad, ugly. And so let me just give you a preview about what that's going to look like when we get to that survey. So if you go to the next slide, Gretchen. And so we're going to ask you just to tell us about roses, things that you loved and you want to see replicated. We want to ask you about buds, great ideas that maybe need to be improved. They're not quite there yet, not ready for prime time, not perfect. And then thorns, things that actively pained you about the experience of being in this coalition, and recognizing that everybody's going to have different experiences with that. So we're just going to give you that just quick preview that's coming in the survey. And Gretchen, do you want to talk through sort of the next steps, like what's coming post the coalition, or post this June segment of the coalition?
Sorry, I just said yes to myself while on mute. Apologies, everyone. So here's what's coming. And we've alluded to this a number of times, but we are organizing into working groups by product, current state, future state, learning agenda and what Donnie was just referring to, which is a guide that to be provided to the local communities, the local laboratory of learning communities, that shares some lessons we've learned about how to be engaged in this kind of co-created process. And we got input from you in the survey about which ones you're most interested in. And like we said, we're going to communicate to you after today which team, but those are going to become the working groups. So when this slide says working groups, there are those 4 working groups, 1 per product. And each group is going to have one of us, a CIE staff person, and a group of coalition members, and a KDE team member. And we're going to ask you in the survey, we've already got your interest in terms of topic, but we're going to ask you about availability, because we're not going to be meeting. We're not going to schedule more of these Zoom calls. I know you're so sad to hear that next Tuesday you're not going to be on a 2-hour Zoom call with all of us. But instead of doing that, in the groups, we are going to just pace out the work of working on these products. And we need to know something about people's availability so that we can pace that out in a way that we make sure that each of you in the group that you're in doesn't miss, a sort of crucial step in working on your core product because of your lack of availability, knowing that July is a hard time. So we're going to ask you to do the survey. We're going to put you in these groups. We're going to set the schedules based on what you tell us. And we're going to be working virtually through shared documents that build on really all the components that we've been building up to now. So today you were part of brainstorming storylines for your user type, brainstorming storylines across user types, brainstorming statements about the future state, brainstorming statements about the thorny questions that need to be asked, which are headed straight into the learning agenda. And you're going to be giving feedback in this survey about this process. So today, I'm sure this was not lost on you. Today's agenda was pulling all of those things together so the working groups have the raw material they need to begin refining products. Then sometime in August, we'll be getting together either virtually or in person to review across teams, across these working groups. So here's a little calendar. I know everyone loves a calendar of activities. So like I just said, in July, we're working in these groups. In August, we'll be coming together with drafts of those different reports, excuse me. And the department has a lot of work that they're going to be doing to prepare for communications and ultimately for a summit, this sort of Future of Education in Kentucky Summit, to be hosted in, I think it's actually going to be late October, early November. So we as a group are going to be, I'm sure, on some calls in the future, but it will not be in July. We're going to see how the products shape up, but this is just a general view of how these things are going to go over time. So we get from draft products in our working groups to us as a coalition validating those, to those being shared out with the broader community across the Commonwealth, and also being used to help launch the effort of the local laboratories of learning. So you can read more detail here if you want. We'll share the slides, but that's the gist of the timeline. Okay, Donnie?
Yep, that's great. Thanks. And these insights that we've all sort of put together in, I know, moments where it felt like, where are we going? What are we doing? I think hopefully you can start to see today how all of this work of building empathy and connecting with each other, but also connecting with the broader community, is now really leading into some stories that will feel very resonant to people. Will feel like, when people look at Concerned Cora or look at Anxious Aisha, they will see themselves, they will see their neighbors, they will see their friends, they will see their children. And that's what we want. And that's really what we've been able to do here. And this next couple of months are going to be about capturing those stories and finalizing them in a way that will feel powerful to the whole Kentucky community as we launch into the laboratories of learning, really beginning or really culminating and kicking off with the summit that's coming in October and November. So that's, I just wanted to acknowledge that the beauty and power of all that work as a lead in to our sort of closing reflection and our connection activity, sort of as we round out June all together on the next slide, 23. Mm-hmm. So this is the end of a chapter. We are not closing the book. There are other stories that we are responsible for hearing and writing down and sharing. Just want to give a little bit of space, either in the chat or out loud, in just quick little blurbs. What are some appreciations of this chapter that you want to share with this community? What are some, this is just an appreciations moment. You don't have to answer that last question. What is the story of this coalition? We're still writing that. But what are some appreciations from this June experience? What are some things that you have come to appreciate, or any acknowledgments that you want to give to this experience? You can do that either in the chat or come off mute and just share. All right. As we noted, there's a survey that we're going to ask you to complete. Gretchen's put it in the chat. Thank you. And it really goes into many pieces, giving feedback on the coalition, the reports process, and then also just calendaring out some availability. So just checking off boxes for each day that you might be willing to contribute some time and energy to the work ahead. We're not going to tap you for all of the days, and you're not committing the whole day. You're just saying, I'm going to be on the grid during this time. Like if you know you're taking vacation, don't click on those dates. If you know that you're not going to be available for whatever reason, but days when, when available, you might have a couple of hours to sort of do something, just so that we can coordinate the handing off of the baton of the work moving forward. So I just want to, and then there's also a section at the end that asks you to lean in and answer some questions about coming back together in August, how we might do that. And so we thank you in advance for completing that survey. Thank you for the reflections. And with all that, I'm going to hand it over to Commissioner Glass to close out this chapter of the Kentucky Coalition for Advancing Education.
Thanks, Donnie. I'll be brief. I know that you've all done an extraordinary amount of work, and I had the chance to listen in toward the end of it tonight and visit in some of the breakout rooms to see the work that you were doing. The one thing that I want you to hear from me is thank you, and how grateful and appreciative we are of all the time and energy that you invested into this effort. We know that you've got families. It's been beautiful just about every day that we've asked you to come in here and do this. So we know that it's been a big commitment on your part. So thank you, thank you, thank you from us. We also said that you would move really fast, and you have. You've covered a lot of ground and taken ideas from the 1,200 participants who were part of our listening tour and tried to boil that down into some challenges that we have with our current education system, and also to start looking ahead and imagine what school could be and what education could look like for our kids going forward. And that's exciting work. So great job on how far you've come in such a short amount of time. We are really proud of this effort at the Kentucky Department of Education, and proud of all of you. When we started this, it was really to see, could we pull together the voices of all people in Kentucky from different perspectives and backgrounds, and hear especially from people that we don't always hear from when we make policy decisions or we do this future visioning work. Make sure their voices are intentionally included. And come out with something that was a powerful narrative and dream or vision around what the future could be. And that's the work that you have moved us significantly toward. We've still got some more to do, but we're so proud of this effort, not being driven by a political agenda or a political actor or some person or some interest group, but really being driven by the voices of Kentuckians. And so I'm most proud of that. Thanks also to the team from CIE. You've been extraordinary partners all through this, and we've relied on you so much to do a lot of the heavy lifting and coordination of these meetings and thinking ahead. Where does the group need to go next? You've really been a great team to work with, and it's been a delight to get to work with you. And thanks also to the team at KDE, who's been part of this as well. You continue to make me so proud just to be associated with you, with your professionalism and commitment. We've got some work still ahead of us. I look forward to showcasing this in a number of ways in the months ahead, especially looking forward to that Future of Education Summit that we're looking at November 1st and 2nd for the dates that will be held in Louisville, and hope that we can bring everybody together to have this important conversation as a state and feature this work at that. Thank you so much again, and I guess I will turn things back to Donnie and the folks at CIE for next steps. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Glass. And there we are. Our very first community agreement was start and end on time. And here we are, 6:01. So we just want to say thank you, and thank you for the leadership of the KDE team and for everybody here. It's really incredible work that everybody should be really proud of. Please complete the survey. Next step for coalition members survey. I'm going to put it in the chat again. Don't leave without clicking on it and opening it up in your browser or your phone. That's really important for all of our next steps. So this is not the end. We'll see you all soon. Have an awesome July. Thank you. It's been really wonderful.
I'm taking the big photo, everybody.
Oh yeah, wait, yep, everybody video on.
Happening. Hang on, one more. I gotta switch over to the second screen. There's so many of us. I gotta do the double screen. Boom. Got it.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.